you asked that 10, 20 years ago, the numbers would have gone down proportionately. There have only been a handful of people who've been abroad 30, 40 years ago. So you'll travel a lot. You need to know where you're going. You need to know how the world looks. You need to know where the countries are. But I think context gives context to our world, and it helps you to understand some of the big challenges we face, some of the big environmental challenges. We all hear about global climate change, pollution, the way the world is changing, and learning about geography will help you to understand that more. Now, I think geography is a good one for it. I think I'm just one of endless numbers of television presenters, and all of them seem to have got to the job by a different route. So I don't think you can use me as any sort of example, because as I say, I wasn't a very good student and I regret that. I think generally you should do what you like, and I don't think you should really try and structure your entire career and think, well, what do I need to get into this job, what do I need to do this? I think you should do what you enjoy. I think you should generally do that in life, actually. Follow your passions, follow your heart. Don't think, oh my goodness, I must do media studies to become a television presenter. I must do history, I must do geography, or something like that. Do what you really love. I suppose I enjoyed politics, history, subjects like that. Geography as well, of course. It's very happy with it. And those are great subjects for giving you, as I say, context and giving you some understanding of the wider world, which will help. But do what you want to do, don't do what you think you should do. Well, I left school and I didn't have very many qualifications, and to my shame. And I didn't go to university, and I was unemployed for a period of time. I ran charity shops. And I suppose it was running charity shops that gave me a bit of a sense of, gave me more self-confidence in life, I suppose. And I managed to get a job as a postboy on a newspaper, on the Sunday Times newspaper. So I was literally there sorting the post, 7 o'clock in the morning, and working like that, helping to get my foot in the door. And it was basically like work experience, really. It gave me a bit of an inkling into how the newspaper was run. And that was how I started. I started working with a journalist. I worked as a journalist for a number of years. And then I left the newspaper to write books. I wrote several books, and then I wrote books on terrorism, which nobody read until the events of September 2001. It's a long time ago for you lot, isn't it? But it feels like a blink of the eye for me. And then nobody read the books, and then after the events that we all know about in September 2001, the BBC started saying, would you like to make some television programmes with us? And I just said yes, really. Opportunities have come in front of me during life, and I've said yes to them. And I think that's quite a good idea as well. Don't be frightened of new chances, new opportunities, even if it feels a bit scary. I've always tried to say yes and give it a go. Quite naive and a simple little lad, and I was sent up there to find these terrorists. It was ridiculous.
So exciting rather than scary at the time.
It was exciting and scary, and I was actually late to meet them because I went to a post office to send my mum a postcard because I'm out of London, mum, and I'm meeting terrorists, and if I don't come back, here's where I am. So it was a very bizarre experience, but no, generally I think my family has been very supportive. My brother does something quite similar. We'll get copies of the local newspapers from the country that we're going to. We'll get on the telephone and we'll ring people up. So at the moment, let's say for example, we've got to travel through part of Tanzania in East Africa, and we'll call the local BBC bureau and we'll talk to the people who work there. We'll talk to people who work for pressure groups and charities, people like Friends of the Earth, World Wildlife Fund. I was just talking yesterday to a group called the Environmental Justice Foundation. They're interested in issues relating to how much fishermen are paid off the coast of Africa. So we call them up and have a long conversation, write down everything. So it's talking to people, it's reading up on things, it's basically finding out what goes on in these countries. And we rely a lot on what we call fixers. So these are local guides in the country who you see on the TV. So in the clip you just saw, I was in Bangladesh there, and there was a guy standing next to me with a slightly pointy beard who was the wonderful Tanjil, who's a lovely, lovely guy. We need somebody who speaks good English, can translate for us, and can just act as an intermediary between us and the country and the people we're visiting, because often we're in places where they don't see foreigners, and they don't see TV cameras, and they wonder who on earth we are and what we're doing. It's a combination. We work as a team. Obviously, it's not just me who's going away on the programs. We have quite a small team. We have myself, a cameraman, then we have an assistant producer who's also a camera person. Once that's been my wife, will be no longer. And then we have a director producer who tries to keep an eye on everything that's going on, and he or she can see if somebody's about to fall down a hole, or they're filming me walking backwards, or realises we need to get moving because we've got to go to our next place. And before we go out, we have lots of meetings at the BBC, and we talk with our team here, our researchers. We work out, right, can we get from here to here, driving within 2 days? How long can we stay there? Look, there's a festival over here, we need to get there. So lots of logistics and planning. But it's a team decision. If one of us really, really thinks we should do one issue, one story, like their child labour in Bangladesh, which I felt very strongly about that we needed to do, then we'll make the time to film it. In a refugee camp on the border between Somalia and Kenya, she lived in the desert, and she lived there basically her entire life. She escaped from Somalia to this refugee camp when she was 3. She spent her entire life growing up in this refugee camp. And the government refused to let the refugees leave this camp. So she was allowed to travel 4 kilometres from the centre of this camp in any one direction and no further. So it's basically like an open prison in the desert. And she was there her entire life. She'd learned to speak perfect English because there were charity workers there who were educating people. But she couldn't travel. So she had a good education. You know, she knew about the rest of the world. She wanted to offer the world all her skills and resources, but she wasn't allowed to leave this camp. And I flew into this camp in a little plane and talked to her, met her, and was really moved by her situation, because it's just really an accident of birth that meant I had this magical British passport that meant I was able to leave and I was able to fly off around the planet. They're seated at the United Nations, and they're really desperate to have their own identity and status recognised. They want all this. But nobody will recognise them, so they're sort of jumping up and down saying, recognise us as a country as well. And the rest of the world won't. So there's this place, Somaliland, which is very poor. It's in the Horn of Africa, which is a very dangerous part of the world, but it's democratic. It's got women in government, it's got elected MPs, it's got a minister for tourism, police in uniforms, and traffic lights. It's got its own currency, it's got the fundamentals of the state. And I love that country, despite its absolute poverty, because the people there were really inspiring. They were wonderful people who were building their own country. It was a very exciting place to live.